People from 172 countries attended the International AIDS Conference in Montreal, which wrapped up yesterday. The event helped highlight the enormous progress that has been made in HIV research and treatment technology. At the conference, Canada announced its own investment of nearly $18 million to expand access to HIV testing in the country. However, advocates say that a lot more is needed. This comes as a growing number of people in Canada are affected by HIV. In fact, the number of people living with HIV in Canada has risen by 25% since 2008. Well, joining us now to give us more understanding into what we know so far about HIV and treatment in Canada is Dr. Abhishek Raut, Medical Director of Appletree Medical Group. Dr. Raut, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Great to be here to discuss this very important topic.
Definitely. Now, let's start with what we know so far about the HIV virus in terms of how it's transmitted and how it affects the human body.
All right, so HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, it's a virus that attacks cells that help fight infection in the body, so making a person much more vulnerable to infections and diseases. It's really spread by contact with bodily fluids of a person with HIV, most commonly during unprotected sex or through sharing injections or drug equipment. What we do know is left untreated, HIV can lead to a disease called AIDS, which is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. The human body can't get rid of HIV. There's no effective cure that exists. So once you have HIV, you have it for life. Globally, approximately 1.5 million people were infected with HIV just last year, and estimated 650,000 deaths were linked to AIDS.
And what are some things that are still not known about HIV as we continue to research it?
Right. So there's a lot of things we still don't know. We don't know how to create a vaccine to combat. We don't know how it's able to evade our immune system. But if I were to focus on one thing, it's this: 1 in 4 people with HIV don't know that they have HIV. So in Canada, that translates to about 17,000 people. And since nearly 1 million still die each year from the virus, knowing that status is a huge improvement. And we're looking to really target on getting people to know their status here.
Well, it's good news that Canada is expanding testing of HIV. Now, we know one of the top concerns around HIV, as you mentioned, is developing AIDS. So what do we know so far about how and why this happens?
Right. So if you have HIV, but you're not on any form of treatment, eventually the virus will weaken your body's immune system enough and you'll progress to AIDS. Now, AIDS is basically the late stage of the HIV infection, where the immune system is incredibly badly damaged because of the virus. So at this point, you have a very weak immune system, and any infection can be life-threatening. Without that HIV medicine in general, people with AIDS typically survive about 3 years. And someone with a dangerous opportunistic infection could survive only about 1 year.
Now, staying on the issue of treatment, we mentioned the number of people with HIV in Canada has risen. As I mentioned, it was risen by 25% since 2008. So what kinds of treatment or treatments does Canada offer to those with HIV?
Right. So Ottawa estimates that we're looking at approximately 63,000 people living with HIV in Canada. The mainstay treatment is antiretroviral therapy, which really focuses on targeting the virus and bringing down that viral load. So people on ART take a combination of antiretroviral medications. Oftentimes 2 or 3 different HIV drug classes are used to bring down the viral load there.
All right, Dr. Raut. So can people with HIV live a normal and healthy life as long as they have access to such treatment?
That's correct. So people can live quite a long and healthy lives. Nearly half of the people living with HIV in Canada are aged 50 and older. And what we do see is HIV still acts as a very inflammatory marker. So even though we are living longer, what we do find is cardiovascular disease, diabetes, kidney disease, and cancers are more likely in the HIV population.
All right, Dr. Raut, about a minute left here, but one of the main issues around HIV is the stigma, the social stigma associated with it. So what kind of steps can parents take to educate their children about HIV?
I think what you mentioned was exactly correct. I think it's a very tough subject for parents, guardians, and caregivers to really discuss with their children, and it is because of that stigma. I think the most important thing to fight stigma and to deal with the issue at hand is really to have the education on it. Many parents are uncomfortable because they're not sure of the issues themselves. So the most important thing here is for parents to educate themselves using credible websites like the CDC, for instance.
All right, Dr. Raut, always great having you on Forum Daily. Thank you again for another informative interview.
Thanks so much for having me.
Stay with us. When we come back after the break, we'll be turning our attention to the preliminary estimate by Statistics Canada for Canada's second quarter GDP. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Jack Mintz, an economic and public policy expert, to examine why the economy did not contract as expected. Stay tuned.